right, welcome back to the Minority Arts Appreciation Society podcast. I don't think I said that in the last episode.
We'll do the minority discourse bit. I like the minority discourse bit.
Oh yeah, I'm bringing a much needed, minority perspective to popular internet discourse. And yeah, last week we began our review of Magnolia, which ended up kind of being the 40 minutes of us just being perplexed by the fact that Paul Thomas Anderson exists. and now we can kind of move on to kind of the meat of the film.
Who would have thought that a 3-hour movie would lead to a bloated couple of episodes? Not bloated. Bloated sounds mean.
Yeah, especially one as interesting and entertaining as this one. But I really want to give it its due time.
If you're coming in not having heard the first part of this discussion, I would highly recommend going back and listening to episode 40. This is very much continuing on from that point.
Yeah, and I highly recommend you have watched the film because we're going to spoil it in detail. So I propose that for this episode we kind of run through each character's, I'm going to say 9 characters kind of plot lines and go through their whole arc in the film and just discuss them one by one. And when another character's thought matters for you to explain your thoughts on one thing, feel free to bring it in. Some of them will be longer than others. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
So let's start with the biggest star in this film, Tom Cruise, as Frank T.J. Mackey. Tom Cruise plays a pickup artist. I really adore this character. It felt weirdly prescient of like modern day internet personas.
I agree.
He feels like a cross between like popular pickup artist and like
Keemstar.
What's the name of the fucking Jordan Peterson. He also reminds me a lot like a Jordan Peterson figure, where he takes kind of the pickup artist. Well, obviously Peterson isn't a pickup artist, but kind of taking like be organized and take control of your life and kind of like reaching out to insecure men.
Yeah, I agree. He's same demographic, same kind of ideas of how you fix your life.
Yeah, and fun fact before we move into like what we thought about this Tom Cruise's performance and how his story plays out is Anderson. So the story of how Anderson got Tom film is he like was bumbling around on Kubrick's set for Eyes Wide Shut. I think Kubrick was like, "Hey Anderson, I saw you wrote and directed Boogie Nights. Good job, kiddo." And he's like, "Oh, thanks, Dad." And then I think there's a funny bit about Tarantino saw him on the set and like there's this weird like masculine competition thing in Hollywood. So he goes up like, "Hey man, what you doing here? What you doing around here? What you up to?" That weird Tarantino way. And he was like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I just want to see Tom Cruise." So he goes to see Tom Cruise and he's like, Tom Cruise has got this weird stint of doing like artsy films. There was this Eyes Wide Shut, and then also like Vanilla Sky.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Why does my brain know these things? And
my brain is screaming under all this knowledge. Sorry.
and PTA just like grabs him and is like, "Hey man, want to be in my next?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." So that's how Tom Cruise is here, and in it, Tom Cruise plays himself. Arguably, I got really like weird Scientology vibes from his character as well.
Yeah. So, I think this is one of the best character introductions I've ever seen. The moment where you realize that I was really expecting a giant crowd, and it's just this sad conference room is such the perfect mockery of these people. I think I want to get just like the political and social stuff out of the way quickly because this is a really like incredible ahead of its time deconstruction of these types of people. Like Josh said, this thing's huge right now. Like I was watching this with my housemate and he just said these guys are just incels, but just like we just didn't have a name for them yet, and they weren't on 4chan. So that was really cool to see, and it gave me a lot of respect for the film. Yeah. The performance is gone.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters in any film is that long shot of Tom Cruise like in frame spotlighted with his arms in the air and he slowly brings them down on like an arc and then just like flexes basically.
Yeah,
everyone goes fucking wild. And
to
hit your point about satire before we get into when this character kind of unravels, really deft writing that captures like how misogynistic groups like this are.
Yeah,
and it takes it to such an absurd point with the tame the C word kind of slogan and the picture in the background of like a huge dog chasing a tiny cat.
And the slogan's no pussies have 9 lives.
Exactly. And I love the bit where the guy just, oh yeah, man, this girl called me and she just wanted to be friends and she told me about some guy and he like just like tears her down and like he gets so vicious and evil like in that moment. And in the DVD there's actually some extras of apparently the Safdie brothers talked about how one of them, they were doing like some weird guerrilla advertising for this film where they would just show the Tom Cruise infomercial, 1-800-TAME HER. And this is fucking real. I knew someone in my life who used the word tame to describe approaching women. It's fucked up. And then some of the extended features, it's very Dennis vibes.
It really is.
It's cut out, but the thing about, so you call the girl at 8 p.m. and then you show up at 11 p.m. and you're completely drenched in rain and you're crying and you tell her that your dog has died and then she invites you in and she's gonna like hug you and in that moment like no woman can like resist like a broken man like that. And it's like it's in the it's very much like an Always Sunny scene. It's directed as comedy. I can see why they left it out because it's very very comedy. But yeah, just how deft the satire is here, I'm just blown away by.
And I think I think it would be actually kind of reductive of me to completely separate the social commentary from the character, because I think what he's using this kind of incel atmosphere to do is to cast Tom Cruise as this essentially broken person who's used the power and the meaning that this false chase provides to rectify the gap in his soul, essentially, which I think is brilliant. Brilliant. And sorry, go on.
Just to set like to some context for like, if you don't remember this character like too much, like his whole deal is he's got like real daddy mummy issues, right? So his mum's dying of cancer, and then his dad basically just ran away with presumably a younger woman who we can interpret as Julianne Moore's character. So he's got this whole like he hates his dad. He had to take care of his mother until she died, and then his nanny took care of him basically for the rest of his childhood. So those are kind of the psycho analysis background of why he is this weird misogynist who thinks men are like inherently bad and kind of tries to embrace that as like a naturalistic viewpoint.
And I think you see that so often with these types of people, and it's so real. But like I was saying, this gets torn down. I think in any way it does for a real person. When he's sort of caught in a lie about his mother being still alive and his dad being the one who is dead, and having this, it's less so the facade being ripped away, I think, so much as a reminder for himself of who he is. And because I think what I got from it was, especially with the ending, you can see he is compassionate and did care for his mother, and so you have this reminder that he is a human being. And I think what also this group represents is like him distancing himself from compassion, as you say, with the like, men are not nice, men are not, like, literally one of the messages of the group is how to pretend that like you're a nice and caring person, which is hilarious. But it's the reason for why, when he is exposed to have taken care of his mother, that his whole facade is torn down, and it's just incredible writing.
Oh yeah, in terms of satire, that feels like a clear reference to How to Win Friends and Influence People. They're like one of the first self-help books in the 30s, which is basically one of those horrible toxic capitalists. How to be, how to pretend to be this nice, loving person.
Yeah, it's
And
scary.
I guess as we go through, I really like what you said in episode 1 about how each character feels like a different fragment of like Paul Thomas Anderson's psyche. And I feel like Frank T.J. Mackey is the part of Anderson that is that more like toxic masculine side who can be horrible to women, and also like has this weird resentment of his father, but also deep sadness that he's losing his father.
Yeah.
So I think that is the petal of Anderson that Frank is meant to represent. And I guess the final point on Frank we're touching before we move on is Jesus, man, that catharsis breakdown scene, father, where he's just saying, I hope it hurts, I hope he, it really hurts, and then he realizes his dad is like too far gone to hear him, and he just starts crying because he can't even have this he can't even punish his dad for what's happened.
No.
So it's so gorgeous, and to link this, and at the end of each character segment, I think we'll talk about how the frogs play into it, and it's amazing. It's so smart how Wikipedia lays it out really well because it goes by so quickly in the film. But each character is affected by the frogs in a unique way, and here specifically with Frank's storyline, the frogs actually wake the dad up, and then he finally sees his son, and they get this like final moment, and that's what the frogs give them. And I guess before I let you speak again, I'll just briefly say I do think the frog as a metaphor, for me at least, felt like that catharsis that Tom Cruise that gets to the end, and that every character gets in this film. It feels like the frogs feel like when you're so distraught and pained, and like you just finally cry, right? And it's just this like moment of just pure like anguish and just letting it all out. And then afterwards, the next day, the frogs are still there, your parents still dead, whatever has happened in your life has still happened. The frogs are still there, but the sun's up again, and you can kind of start feeling lighter. And I love that as a metaphor.
The frogs have fallen already. Yeah. No, I love that. I think I just think that's really lovely. For me, because I would be really remiss if I let this episode pass me by without talking about frogs and sort of because and the way that tied this film together for me.
Yeah.
Because for me, I looked into the sort of biblical interpretation of the frogs thing, and there are references to Exodus 8:2, which are like references to Exodus 8:2 littered throughout the film. And I think you're right, though, and obviously with Anderson saying himself, I don't see it so much as a biblical reference, the frogs. The specific line in the Bible is essentially, let my people go or I will rain frogs. And so what I took from it was this feeling of like releasing yourself from earthly and like day-to-day bothers and burdens that essentially stopping you from becoming the person you deep down want to be. For example, the first person you see experience the frogs falling is the police officer Jim, played by John C. Reilly. And I'm sort of going to step into his arc here just for a second, but just to sort of make my point.
We could move into Jim next if you want.
Yeah, sure. So
I'll transition to Jim.
Yes. So Jim is this police officer, and the whole film is very much bumbling and also like it just is clearly not the best person. He's trying to be a good person. He says at the beginning that he wants to be the kind of person that can enact justice by knowing when to let things go and when to make the right call and take the right person away.
He's very much like the American ideal of kind of a white man. Like he's very religious. He's quite like wholesome. Like he genuinely believes he's doing good work as a cop. And I guess I'll let you talk about the frogs in relation to him, I guess.
So I think I get, and just following up from you said, I think if you're taking the film at sort of face value, this film isn't, the film isn't sort of commenting so much on the morality of him being a cop as a thing in itself, more just how he wants to enact justice in that way, which it's debatable whether or not you actually can, but it's not what this film's about. And so he sees another character, Donnie, sort of attempting to rob trying to, well, it's complicated. He sees Donnie doing something illegal, and so and as he turns around to go and sort of apprehend him, this is the moment that the frogs fall, and I think this is him learning to let things go. This is him becoming the person he wanted to be, and I think you see that it falls in this moment for so many of the characters. In Jack's moment, in Frank's moment, you see like essentially he has reached the extent to which anger and pain and all these short-term pain-fueled symptoms of grief, that he's reached the extent of those, and he just simply must move into acceptance. And you have the song as well. It's not going to stop until you wise up. And I think this is wising up. It's letting go of your past and accepting who you are and how that will make you who you want to be. That's ultimately the core of why I love this film.
Yeah, and I guess just to talk more about Jim's character, I've got so most of my problems with this film are with this character's storyline. I think John C. Reilly's performance is fantastic. He's very affable, and it makes sense he'd go on to be the lovable Wreck-It Ralph.
He's a great actor. He's had some duds, but he's a great actor.
This is like a weird part of the film where honestly, I think the film would have benefited from being like maybe 20 minutes longer, because
hot take.
There is this plot line with a murderer called the Worm.
Yeah.
That basically Paul Thomas Anderson has to cut out loads of stuff from that, but also he couldn't cut out all of it because it's integral to Jim's like narrative that he meets the kid, and the kid is important for Julianne Moore's character, and also Jim chasing the worm is important for losing the gun, which is important for his dates. There's too much of this stupid fucking worm shit baked into this plot, so what we get is a completely incoherent
that's the gun losing scene is just confusing.
Okay, so to run the view through our introduction to Jim is he's I kind of like this aspect of Jim where I don't think this film is super critical of cops, but it is honest about cops normally work in kind of policing poorer either black communities or like drug addict communities, right? So it is honest about like the role cops tend to play, and
showing them being antagonistic as well.
Yeah, he isn't really I don't think this is like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so our introduction to him is going to this quite funny scene where he's trying to get into this woman's house because there have been disturbances, and he normally gets these like low-level calls about just noise complaints pretty much. And then he finds a dead body in the closet, and this is never resolved. There's a young kid who is like his weird like sidekick, his sort of what's the name of syndrome kind of character, who wants to be like help him do the detective work, and the kid spits a rap about, and actually Fiona Apple wrote the rap, fun fact. And the rap is gonna like reveal
Fiona Apple wrote that.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's like, I'm gonna get this kid to say the N-word. Anyway,
no. We do have to have these conversations.
We don't have time right now. We're gonna go right past that. And yeah, there's this whole bit in the rap about the one, and hey, I just told you who the killer was, dude. And the kid's like this weird prophet figure. So another like biblical kind of illusion in the and the rap is there's a Reddit post about it. You can pass through it and it basically alludes to every character in the film and it very much sums up the film in a very Midsummer way if you've seen the beginning of Midsummer. Which is quite cool. And the guy who Jim is credited as chasing later on the gun is the Worm, and there's like loads of cutscenes with this guy and this like plot line. And honestly, I was really into that part of the film. And then when I realized that was just never going to get resolved, I was furious. And I think this is an almost perfect film. If it just had that 20 minutes added back in, I would have no problems, pretty much. So that's my beef with the Jim storyline. More Worm.
Magnolia needs more Worm. We don't have time for all these characters.
Oh yeah, and I guess we'll leave Jim there, and we'll come back to him when we get to Claudia's character. But one last thing I guess I'll say about Jim, if you don't have anything more to say, is I don't know how I feel about the final monologue being given to Jim. Because he gets this beautiful line of like, how much are we willing to forgive? And that is such a gorgeous line in terms of the themes of this film. In terms of, this is about fathers who have failed their children, and also just about people failing each other.
Yeah.
And we all have that relationship with our parents, I'm sure, where we have so much reason to be angry, but at some point we're going to be losing them. And how much can we forgive? To just let go. And the film doesn't forgive everyone. I don't think it really forgives
Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't think the film forgives Jimmy. It's very harsh and as it should be. But yeah, that's a beautiful line. But that monologue being contextualized as like this weird, bumbling good guy cop who's like, part of a cop's job is knowing when to punish and when to let go, and it's like really funny. But I don't know if I like it as the final spoken words in the yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyway, let's move on to, I guess, Claudia. I feel like we're naturally moving into Claudia's territory. So Claudia is the daughter of Jimmy Gator, who is a TV host and a father dying of cancer, one of two in the film. And I should have put a content warning at the beginning of this. A content warning for it's Claudia bit for like sexual stuff to kids. I'm sorry about that. You can skip forward maybe 15 seconds, and then later on we'll just allude to it. So yeah, it's revealed that reveal always blows me away. I always like really forget about it, but it's revealed that Jimmy molest Claudia as a child, and this has basically left Claudia like rattled with like drug issues and anxiety, PTSD, self-loathing, and it's a very I felt like this part of the film, if we're taking each character as a part of Anderson, I feel like this is really him reckoning with like his nitty side, his drug problem, which I'm sure is wrapped up with like weird mental health stuff. And yeah, I found this character like narratively really satisfying and moving. Of course, they get the final emotional moment of the film and really embodied from themes. I don't know if I love Melora Walters' performance, if I'm honest with you.
That's interesting.
I don't. I get that she's like on coke the whole time and jittery and hysterical, but I don't know. I feel like Julianne Moore did the anxious drug addict a lot better. And I get that this is like a younger actress, but I don't know. I thought it was really good, but it was the one performance, like the single performance in the film that I felt was a tad weaker than the other.
It's a lot.
How did you feel about Claudia Gator and her character?
I don't find her character as thematically sort of chewable as other people, if I'm honest. I think it has some wonderful moments, and like there's definitely some stuff that I love to mull on, like the scene where it's sort of the emotional climax probably for her arc individually, when she's in the restaurant with Jim and she's sort of saying like, it definitely ties into like the what do you forgive sort of stuff, but where she's like, what there's all this stuff I want to tell you, and I just don't. You'd walk out on me if I did, and it's like, and she's a mess. She's a mess because I think this does sort of speak to me, and I think it speaks to everyone because I think everyone has these things, these shames. She's sort of this exaggerated, melodramatic version of all of us in that everyone has skeletons in their cabinets that, when they want to be authentic and they want to be whole with someone. And the problem with her character is that she can't be whole with anyone, including herself, because she hates herself so much. So she needs someone like Jim that she can be whole with, but that's just so difficult for her. And you see her walk out. And while I find that scene like really powerful, I think, and sort of just a very like faithful character thing, because while the Claudia that we know and that we get to know throughout the film would do this, she would leave that restaurant. I don't know if as a result of this, I really get that ultimate payoff. Obviously you do sort of see them with each other at the end, but I think I really would have loved to see Claudia Claudia be at rest with her own demons in her own way.
Yeah, I can see that as a criticism, and I think, I guess, to try to while I've slated Melora Waters, this poor woman,
you just ruined her career.
I do want to compliment some of the thematic stuff I think this character does. And I guess really her frog scene is so moving, and I think it really speaks to maybe how Anderson relates to his own addiction, where she's trying to bump a line of coke but keeps getting distracted by frogs falling in the sky from behind her, and like is like unsure about what's going on, and then registered and then freaks out. And I feel like that's a great summary of maybe what it's like to have these like substance abuse issues, but also bad stuff are happening in your life, and trying to numb it and block it out, and then ultimately it shakes it to your core, and you have to recognize. And I know what you mean about how maybe this character should be more self-actualized, and yeah, it depends on how the viewer is going to feel about this, because the two big what this character needs more than anything is just like loving acceptance without judgment.
Yeah, that is very true.
Why her arc concludes in the way it does. So I don't think it's completely damnable, but so it depends on how individual people. And I like the way the frog was interrupted for her life is they caused her mum's car to crash into her apartment, and then forcing her mum to kind of go right to her. And, and her mum holds her, and they cry together, and it's just a moment of like having your pain acknowledged. So her mum gives her the power of like acknowledging her pain, whereas the father kind of gaslights her a bit and doesn't really acknowledge it's there.
You've talked me around.
And then Jim's character is just someone who says, you don't have to be ashamed of yourself anymore. You can be completely open with me. And so I don't think it's as simple as just a man saving her. It's just someone saying,
"Oh God, not at all.
You can be open." And her final moment of like smiling with that lovely song playing. Oh, who's the artist again?
Amy Mann.
Amy Mann. Oh, that is one of my favorite film endings ever. And just just as a way of just telling the audience, like, hey, you get through whatever you're going through right now. Just with that smell of like the most fucked character in this film in terms of like emotion. Getting the smell is what a great.
That is wonderful.
That's all I have to say. Claudia, is there anything else you want to say before?
I sort of mentioned it before. I think you talked me around a bit. That moment with her mum is pretty beautiful. And ow. Oh, sorry. I just got a really random shooting pain in my side. That's really weird. Okay.
Please don't die.
That's gone away now.
Okay. You're just like Jimmy Gator when he over. Big Magnolia.
So deep cuts. I think there's a wonderful bit. Just I love it when films build themselves into rewatching, because now the context for that introductory scene of Claudia is so phenomenally powerful. And the first time you watch it, you're kind of the Jimmy plays himself off as very sympathetic. You know, he's a very sort of warm-ish father figure, and now forever that scene is this horrible instance. And I think you can tell PTA has a lot of love for this character. So like she's great. She's great.
Yeah, and I guess that transitions us into Philip Baker Hall playing Jimmy Gator, the TV presenter and father of Claudia Gator. And I guess off the bat, I'll say this is the only character in the film that out and out the film just doesn't forgive and doesn't like. It's up to Claudia if she can find some emotional resolution with her father. Like that's on her, but the film will not give us that, which I think is a really smart move. It would have been really uncomfortable to try to make us feel bad for this character. But I really like how it presents like monsters because he's not like this evil, like chin stroking, more malicious person. He's just straight up bad. But obviously, no one thinks of themselves as a villain, so he presents himself as quite like trying his best, I guess, and like trying to reconcile his relationship with his daughter is ruined. But I like how the frogs punish him in the end, where the frogs kind of save all the other characters. He tries to end it all, kill himself, and the frogs take that away from him, and he has to live with like guilt, which is a wonderful. I love that. I really like how powerful, unflinching the film was with that character.
I completely agree with you. I think the film plays with you for sure as well, because they make him this sort of sad, dying old man, and there's definitely allusions to him being not the best person, but like everyone in this film, that's kind of the point. You sort of all throughout, you feel kind of sympathy for all of these characters about them being not the best. And the moment when he like faints during the filming of the television episode, it brought me to tears, because just this character is so frail and helpless and sort of lashing out in his own helplessness is something really gripping. And then I think, for Paul Thomas Anderson then to go back and double down on the atrocious person that this man is commendable. I don't think genuinely, unfortunately, I mean, this is just it's just rape culture, and like it's incredible to see someone do this in 1999. But I think to get onto losing myself in my words. I really like what you said about just him not being this mustache twirling villain, because, like you said, people present themselves how they see themselves, and he is still living his life in the past. There's a sort of like wonderful little moment at the beginning where you see his flashbacks through the years of him doing this same show, or at least just being on TV. He's in his like 12,000th hour or something like that. And so he still sees himself very much as this person that we're given context for. And I think to have that then torn down in this, I don't think where he's torn down is when his illness is exposed. Like, his true illness is shown in that moment where he talks to his wife, and he's just so despicable because he'll sort of say anything to keep his wife from going and to alleviate himself of guilt. I think what this does for the film is keep it from just sort of saying everyone's okay, you know, as long as you explore redemption and like alleviate yourself from guilt, then you're a good person. Because he in this scene is selfishly trying to alleviate himself of guilt. He's, you know, he's saying like, I cheated on you, and like it's more just that he can't die with that on his mind and not having it being acknowledged by someone else. She doesn't care,
which is like a really great addition of like, she doesn't care that he cheated on her. This is completely all for him.
Exactly. And I think he knew that he knew that, and yeah, it's just a wonderful thing and for the film to do. And I just it was so just want to commend the film for how sensitively as well it treated the reveal, because it's such a it's so grounded. The fact that he can't admit it to himself, you know, he says like, I don't know. She asks, or is it I don't remember?
Yeah, he says I don't remember. Yeah, so yeah, fantastic, very nuanced and touching portrayal of that character there. Great job to Philip Baker Hall for what could have been an easy role to play. And I guess to kind of follow that chain of characters, what logically connects to Philip Baker Hall's character, we got Jeremy Blackman's character, Stanley Spector, who plays kind of the kid at the game show, the super boy genius. And originally I was a bit apprehensive of this character because I felt like he wasn't given enough in the film. But on rewatch, I actually think, man, they did this character so well. And I think what I really like is how, and we'll get to it when we talk about Donnie Smith, portrayed by William H. Macy, but how they kind of show the trajectory this character is on through Donnie Smith's character, which helps us understand how he feels so like used and mistreated. And God, that monologue he gets, I love how childlike it is when he's saying, you can't, I'm not just cute and I need to pee and you can't just sit here and like look at me and like treat me like a freak. And it's so poorly articulated. It sounds like an actual kid just trying to get across this very complicated, horrible feeling, which is very good. And then I love Frog's interaction with him, where he sees the frogs falling and he's the only one who smiles at this. And this is someone obsessed with like facts and like what can happen in the world. And these frogs happen. He's like, this is a thing that can happen. And it's so lovely. And I guess it really speaks to kind of you don't have to be bound or constricted by, you know, these kind of roles that you've kind of forced into. If frogs can fall from the sky, then you can get out of these like horrible relationship roles. So him going to his father and saying, you have to start treating me more kindly, and his father first shooing him off, and then he repeats it, and then he's like, okay, go to bed. But you can kind of see his father's taking it in a bit. Wow, I'm blown away by that, and how small that was. Now it wasn't just Hammy, the father, hugging him. It was this very small moment, like maybe things can get better for this kid, and yeah, I just adored this kid. Pulled it off so well. I can't believe if it's his only acting role. He did such a great job. And how did you feel about it?
I adore this moment for how resolute he is. Like, even when you can see that his father is like, you know, kind of ignoring him. I think, like you said, he does take it in on the second time, but he even with that, you can see that this child has changed as a person, and I think it's wonderful. And the whole thing is just so wonderfully melodramatic, but despite it being melodrama, it never descends into being twee.
Yeah, that's one thing that. Well, let's jump to Julianne Moore's character. That's one thing that Julianne Moore says in it. That in the documentary, she says it was quite tough to strike a balance between like melodrama and realism, because obviously this film is incredibly hysterical and it's trying to capture the absolute height of something of many people being pushed to the limit emotionally. And she talks about how it was very challenging to play this role without it just being melodrama. And so she plays Linda Partridge, the wife of Earl Partridge, who we'll probably get to next. And you know, she's a drug addict, also dealing with the guilt of feeling like she used a man who she ended up falling for. It's unclear as to if she really loves him. Guilt talking, but I think this was one of the characters in the films, other than Julianne Moore's fantastic performance, definitely one of the simpler plot lines of the film. That really drives home this theme of like reconciling with guilt, like how much can we forgive, not only of other people but of ourselves, and it's a great character where I think what I like the most about her, no one actually thinks she's a bad person. so she gets no
Yes.
catharsis. She's like, "Hey, I married an older man because I wanted his money, and then I cheated on him with so many people. I sucked so many dicks." And the guy she's saying this to doesn't care. He's like, "Okay, it doesn't matter. Like, no one gives
Adultery
a
isn't
shit."
legally a
Yeah.
crime. Yeah.
How and like so how do you forgive yourself when the world won't punish you? And wow, man, that's such a cool theme to hit on. And I guess my favorite moment from her is when she's stroking Philip Seymour Hoffman's character's face and
That made me
apologizing for
tear
freaking
up.
out on him, and she's completely incoherent in that moment. Like, she doesn't make any sense, and he's just like looking at her like, "Wow, this is so broken," and just crying.
Yeah.
Lovely. So I loved Julian Moore's performance. Surprisingly, completely incredible.
Oh, I adore it. I think it's fucking amazing, and I think the moment you speak of is probably my favorite from her, simply because, like you said, it's incoherent, but it's agency, and I think that's the one of the points of forgiveness and self-forgiveness that this film sort of allows in a way, because she has taken agency in becoming a better person, similarly to Jim and being a better police officer.
Yeah.
It's the fact that she has taken action herself. She has, like, genuinely admitted wrong, and she's in such a state of just outpouring love and genuine emotion. And I think genuine emotion is the most important thing there, that she's sort of absolved within herself to an extent. And yeah, I just think, oh, it's just gushing about this film because pulls off everything. It pulls off everything.
It's pretty crazy. And I guess to just before we move on to Earl Partridge, Linda Partridge, Julian Moore moment is, I guess, it crashes the ambulance into the recovery center at the hospital. So in the same way overdosing kind of crashes you into getting better, hopefully.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. It's not always super clear cut how the frogs play into it, but it always seems to play into it. So moving on to Jason Robards as Earl Partridge. Okay, so this is the other patriarchal figure in the film who is dying of cancer and dealing with lots of guilt. And basically their whole thing in the film is laying on this hospital bed being tended to by Philip Seymour Hoffman and coming to terms with regrets about their horrible, like, masculine ways, if you will. One thing really sad about this character is Jason Robards actually, like, had cancer, like, right before doing this role. So he said it was really cathartic for him to rehearse that period because he was so, like, blazed off from morphine and whatnot. He couldn't even really feel the pain of being it. Like, it was such a blur. So he
Yeah.
liked going back to that period that meant a lot to him and, like, rehearsing it and then performing that pain.
Wow.
And sadly, I think he went on to die, like, almost immediately after this film was done shooting. So this is really a man on the brink. So this is a very true performance. And
Wow.
yeah. I guess one thing I'll say about the character before Matt see what she has to say is, yeah, his monologue about regret, where he just keeps repeating, "Oh, the regret, the regret." So powerful and really brings together all the themes in this film in a really nice way. And again, this is a weird example of poor Thomas Anderson's film being better people than he is. And, like, maybe he's aspiring to a better person with writing characters like this, which clearly give off this guilt about, like, I'm such a fucking shitty person. Why was I so bad?
Yeah.
And in all the ways he's shitty, he's like toxic masculine ways, right? Like, abandoning his son and wife for a younger woman.
Yeah.
And cheating on her repeatedly, even though he loves her. And I really like how all he wants, it's like kind of like the light side of the Jimmy Gator. All he wants is to see his son again, so his son can have catharsis. And it's not selfish like it is for Jimmy. It's really just, I know my son needs to see me and let this chest. I'm not really going to say anything. Like, I'm not even here enough to say anything. I just have to see that boy again. So yeah, just a really lovely character.
I think what I love is the I think the positivity he brings, because it's such a being such a bleak film and covering all of these things, and sort of like we talked about with Claudia, how even then it manages to have the smile. In this moment, it's such a wonderfully celebratory moment of life. He's sort of saying, like, live the regrets, have your regrets, do the whole thing, get the girl. You know, I adore that. I adore that for this film, and because it never descends into languishing or anything like that. I haven't seen, I don't know, something like what's it called, Requiem for a Dream, but like where it's just bleak. This is so sadly joyous, and I think when you're getting it from this character at the time that you do, and I think I want to emphasize how importantly it's bounced off Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, Phil, because I wouldn't really consider him one of the major characters. I think he's phenomenal.
We can move into Philip Seymour Hoffman's characters right now.
Yeah, I think he's a phenomenal actor for the film, and I think he's a phenomenally important part of the film, but I wouldn't say he's sort of on the same journey that the rest of them are. But I think what he does do is he provides this tenderness to the darker moments with Linda and with Earl, and especially with Earl, and it just seeing such a sort of compassionate relationship in someone's later years, just, I don't know, it's really emotional.
So moving into Philip Seymour, he plays a character called Phil Farmer, which I don't know, it really feels like Paul Thomas Anderson's friend, like, I want my friend Phil to play a nurse, let's call him Phil Farmer. That's a name to have. Funny play on words, I guess. And yeah, like you said, he doesn't have the same kind of emotional arc as the other characters. Sort of an audience to lots of the other characters. So I really felt like this was, if the other characters are either playing weird reflections of Paul Thomas Anderson's dad or fractions of Paul Thomas Anderson himself, Hoffman feels like he's playing just a friend who's looking in on this madness.
Yeah.
And as maybe it was like to actually be PTA's friend, maybe that's the way he played. So just kind of this like nursing, loving figure who's just there to like watch and cry, and nothing bad actually happens to this character, but he cries so much. It's so lovely. He feels so deeply for everything that's going on around him. So on like a meta level, he kind of feels like maybe, you know, symbolically this is just like the outside figure who watches our breakdowns and just cares about us.
Yeah, no, I really loved what you said about just feeling so deeply. He just clearly does. He's clearly such a intuitive, emotional person.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I have to say about the character before we move on is I find the delivery of the part where he needs to order the porno mag so he can call Tom Cruise's character, but he also needs to order like cigarettes and like bread and stuff he actually needs. So he's ordering all that stuff, and he gets to the porno mags, and he's amazed at how many brands they have. He's like chuckling to himself.
You guys have Hustler?
And then she's like, "Do you still want like the bread and the cigarettes?" It's like, yeah, of course. Like, I was just such a funny scene. So we're almost done. Who do you have left?
Donnie. I think it's just Donnie.
You're right. We're done. It is just Donnie.
Hey,
they're amazing. So finally, that brings us to Donnie Smith, portrayed by William H. Macy, who's really weird because like he's amazing in everything I see him in, but he was only really like popular in like the late 90s. Like he was in every film for like 5 years in the late 90s, and then you don't really see him as much anymore.
I just know him from Fargo. That's it. Which is obviously very much what you're talking about.
He's also amazing in Bigger Notes, which you've technically seen.
So
I don't
Donnie.
have as much to say about Donnie Smith other than I really tells us about Stanley's character, the kid, without being too obvious. He just tells us this is
Yeah.
the obvious trajectory this kid is on. And he was also got some of the most quotable lines in the film. Like, I love him. I have so much love to give. I just don't know where to put it.
Oh,
He was just a sweetheart. Like,
yeah.
I love the whole. He's kind of very much like maybe the most oddball, other than John C. Reilly, maybe the most oddball character here.
He's the most
He's got
oddball.
the whole
Yeah.
thing where he's in love with his bartender, right? Who's got these like braces. So he's like, if I get braces, my bartender will fall. And
Because
love it.
when it first came up, I thought it was queer coding because I was like, oh, he wants the girl, he wants to look like the guy so he can get with the girl, but really he wants the guy. And then it was just like, oh no, he's just queer. Okay. And like,
it portrays a weird alternate American universe where men openly talk about being gay and no one freaks out. Like,
yeah,
he has this conversation with a romantic competitor who's like this suave older guy.
I hate that guy.
He's trying to fuck the bartender.
Yeah.
And confesses his love to the bartender, and no one's like reacts and calls him the F gay word. Everyone's like, damn, that's pretty intense. I like this cozy alternate reality where people could just be gay.
It's lovely. It's lovely. Wow, imagine that. What I will say is, just on a more enjoyment level for the film, it was watching the scene where he's just talking to the guy at the bar, and he's just really having one of those actor moments. And that's one thing I love about this film is I just love films that just give amazing actors, and I think pretty much everyone who is in this film is at least great. You know? Like, at least they're at least doing a great job, and I think William H Macy is doing an amazing job. And he just rants and rants, and the camera's right in his face, and it's so like visceral, but at the same time you're just perfectly aware this guy is just talking, but I am racked right now with this character's emotion. And I love films like that, and it's just one of the more like visceral reasons why I love this film. I just love films that sort of let actors do their thing, you know.
Yeah, give them classical acting.
Yeah, very classical, just like theatrical stuff.
Well, I guess that brings us to the end of this film. All the characters sing "It's Not Going to Stop." The song's actually called "Wise Up" by what's the name of the
Amy Mann.
Amy Mann. It somehow made me like an adult contemporary song for the 90s. Mind blowing. Frogs from the sky, and the cheeky narrator comes back, and everything's okay, and the sun comes up the next day. So it's clear that we both are completely enamored with this film. I'm really relieved that Matty liked this as much. I was really scared you'd come on here and be like, Josh, you are a madman for becoming obsessed with like this horrible coked up dude, bro. And you're completely wrong. His films are just as bad as he is. I'm happy you saw some of what I saw in him, the beauty, I guess, beneath the ugliness.
That fight would have been ugly.
I'm gonna give this a strong recommend. It's basically perfect, apart from like problems I had because shit was cut out and I wish it stayed in. So when my criticism of the film is I wish it was 30 minutes longer, and it's already 3 hours and a half, 3 hours long rather, that is a sign it's a fantastic film. So strong recommend.
Yeah, strong recommend. One of the best we've done on the podcast. I think if you're looking for I always sort of frame my recommendations around like what you can get out of this. And I think if you're looking for, and this is why I needed this film, I think if you're looking for a life film, you know, a film to make you sort of get back in touch with what you want and who you are, and how compelling and meaningful films can be, then this is really your ticket. Don't let the 3 hours put you off. I really am not just saying this as like a film student, you know, it's actually not that inaccessible. It really, really is just a film that happens to be very long, and that's fine. I give this such a strong recommend. Yeah,
and in my opinion, this feels shorter than lots of dull
bad
90-minute long films I've seen. Like, this felt so much shorter than Underwater,
I agree.
That film felt like an eternity.
We watched that together, and that was like 90 minutes. Oh, you're so right. That was so long.
Anyway, so that's our epic Magnolia review. I don't know if
it all the way through. You're amazing.
Yeah, I don't know, like if we'll do more 3-hour-long films in the future, and I don't know if they'll always go on this long. I guess it just happened as it happened. I guess.
I think if we like them, probably.
Yeah. So I'll just announce next week's review and then dip. So next week we're going to be talking about Fiona Apple. Finally,
Woo!
The woman, the legend, quite possibly one of the greatest human beings who's ever walked the planet. Beep boop up. Okay. And the album we are reviewing is When the Pawn Hits the Conflict, He Thinks Like a King. What he knows throws the blows when he goes to the fight, and he'll win the whole thing before he enters the ring. There's nobody to batter when your mind is your might. So when you go solo, you hold your own hand. Remember that depth is the greatest of heights. And if you know where you stand, then you know where you land. And if you fall, it won't matter because you know that you are right. Also normally abridged as When the Pawn. That's what we're reviewing next week.
Amazing. Amazing. You did that. That was also just like genuinely a really nice reading of it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So join us next week where we'll review When the Pawn by Fiona Apple. And thank you for joining us.
And if you haven't already, subscribe or follow us wherever you're listening, and follow us on social media. That'll be in the description. Thanks very much for listening. Goodbye.